You need to watch this if you struggle with understanding how presidential power really works in America. Welcome back to Universal Insight. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for more updates. Washington, D.C. is tense, its streets unusually quiet as the city braces for a moment that could alter the nation's course. All eyes are on the Supreme Court, awaiting a historic showdown that could redefine the very boundaries of presidential power in America. This isn't just about tariffs. It's about a fundamental question. Who truly controls America's economic fate? The president, wielding executive authority, or Congress, representing the people? Soon, 9 justices will gather to hear arguments over Trump's sweeping tariffs, imposed under a decades-old emergency law that's rarely been tested at this level. These tariffs weren't minor. They sent shockwaves through global trade, disrupted supply chains, and hit American wallets, raising prices on everyday goods. At stake is a critical issue. Can a president act alone in a crisis, invoking emergency powers without oversight? Or does the Constitution demand Congress's approval before such sweeping actions can take effect? Lower courts have already rebuked Trump's actions, questioning the limits of executive authority, but their rulings are on hold, leaving the nation in a state of legal limbo. Now, everything hinges on the Supreme Court's decision. Billions of dollars in trade, the livelihoods of countless Americans, and the very limits of presidential power are on the line. The outcome could echo for generations, setting a precedent for how far a president can go in the name of emergency, and how much Congress can push back. The country waits, holding its breath, as uncertainty hangs in the air. The constitutional storm is about to break, and its impact will be felt far beyond the marble steps of the court. The legal battle began with a shock from the U.S. Court of International Trade. Trump used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, meant for foreign threats, to justify broad tariffs, calling trade deficits a national emergency. The court said, no IEEPA isn't a blank check for tariffs, and rewriting trade law is Congress's job. The Federal Circuit Court of Appeals agreed, ruling Trump exceeded his authority. They emphasized, Congress controls trade and taxes, not the president. These rulings were a major check on executive power, yet the tariffs remain, as the decisions are stayed pending Supreme Court review. Hundreds of billions in duties hang in the balance. The final word now belongs to the Supreme Court. The stakes have never been higher. Most cases crawl to the Supreme Court, taking years to wind their way through the lower courts and legal bureaucracy. But this one is on a legal fast track, moving at a pace rarely seen for cases of such national importance. The court consolidated the tariff challenges and set oral arguments for November, signaling just how urgent and consequential the justices consider this dispute. At the heart of the case is a pivotal question. Did Trump have legal authority under IEEPA to impose massive tariffs by declaring a trade emergency, or did he overstep the limits of presidential power? The government argues the law gives presidents broad power in crises, especially when national security or economic stability is at stake. Businesses counter, if Congress wanted to let presidents launch trade wars alone, it would have said so clearly, not left it open to interpretation. The Constitution's Commerce Clause gives Congress, not the president, control over trade, a principle that has shaped U.S. economic policy for generations. The major questions doctrine looms large here. Big policy changes, especially those with sweeping economic impact, need clear congressional approval. The justices could strike down the tariffs, triggering huge refunds and reshaping the rules for future presidents, or uphold them, expanding presidential power in ways that could echo for decades. Every outcome is possible, and the stakes could not be higher. The fate of U.S. trade and the balance of power between Congress and the president hangs in the balance with ripple effects for the entire nation. The nation watches anxiously as the court prepares to decide a case that could redefine the limits of executive authority. This isn't just about tariffs, it's a test of America's separation of powers. The Constitution gives Congress power over commerce. The president enforces the laws. Trump's tariffs bypassed Congress, using emergency powers to rewrite trade rules. Legal scholars point to the Youngstown case where the Supreme Court blocked Truman from seizing steel mills, reaffirming limits on executive power. Challengers argue Trump's actions defied Congress's clear process for tariffs. The court must decide. Can a president create new powers in a crisis, or must he follow the law as written? A ruling for Trump could expand emergency powers for future presidents. A ruling against him would reaffirm Congress's authority and check the imperial presidency. The precedent set here will shape American government for decades. The economic stakes are massive. If the tariffs are struck down, the government could owe hundreds of billions in refunds to importers. For businesses, that's a potential lifeline after years of higher costs and uncertainty. The tariffs have fueled inflation, raised prices, and disrupted supply chains. They've also triggered foreign retaliation, hurting American exporters. Ending the tariffs could ease inflation and stabilize trade, but would also shock industries that benefited from protection. Some companies could face sudden competition and losses. Trade policy always creates winners and losers. The Supreme Court's decision will ripple through the economy, affecting jobs, prices, and global markets. Everyone is waiting for clarity. As the Supreme Court takes up the case, all eyes turn to the justices' questions during oral arguments. These moments are where the real drama unfolds. The way the justices probe the lawyers and challenge each side's arguments can reveal where the court might lean, and hint at the legal reasoning that could shape the outcome. The final decision could be sweeping or narrow, upholding or striking down the tariffs, or even sending the case back for more review. Sometimes the court surprises everyone with a compromise or a split ruling. The biggest impact will be a clear ruling on presidential versus congressional power over trade, a question that goes to the heart of how our government works. If the tariffs fall, the focus will shift to processing refunds, untangling years of trade policy, and watching how markets and businesses react to the sudden change. If upheld, presidents gain a powerful new tool for unilateral action, reshaping trade policy with the stroke of a pen, and potentially changing the balance of power for future administrations. This case will shape not just the balance of power in Washington, but also ripple through the global economy, affecting international relationships and trade flows. The arguments are complex, but the stakes are simple: power, money, and the rule of law. Billions of dollars and the future of executive authority hang in the balance. The outcome will define the limits of emergency authority for years to come, setting a precedent that could affect every future president. The nation and the world are watching, waiting to see how the highest court in the land will decide this historic case. The constitutional storm is here, and its outcome will echo for generations.